Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Zwift British Cycling eRacing Championships qualifiers, where we are looking for 10 men, 10 women to qualify for the live finals that'll be taking place. And it's going to be an absolutely amazing race out here today. I am joined today by my co-commentator, Mr. Greg Leo, and we are going to be taking a quick look at the course preview. We got 6 minutes and 47 seconds. My name is Nathan Guerra. For those of you guys that missed that, be commentating on the race for you today. We've got the men's race, the women's race coming at you in the pens right now. It looks like we've got about 19 women with 11 minutes to go to the start of their race, so probably some of them out there still warming up for the men's race. Already in the pens, 179. When I logged in, there were like 700 people almost getting going for the race, warming up for the race. Greg, going to be an exciting race. We're on Watopia for 2 laps of the figure 8. What do you think about the course out there today, Greg?
Oh, this course is absolutely classic. I think this is a great choice for a national championship. It kind of offers a little something for everyone. You got 2 climbs in there. One is a short, punchy climb of about a minute 30. We're going to be looking at today. The other is more like a 3-minute 30 climb, a little bit longer. And we're going to be hitting both of those climbs twice. So there's a lot of flat section in between. Most likely we're going to see a bunch sprint at the end, but there's a lot of chances for team tactics here and different kind of riders to implement their style of riding to try and win this thing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it does play out. I mean, I have a feeling we are going to have some serious breaks right from the get-go. Being the usual starts out on Zwift, we might have some not with a whole lot of experience, some with those with a lot of experience, but with the number of riders that we do have in the pack right now, getting ready to go from the piers here, I have a feeling that we're going to see a pretty big split and a lot of groups making chases with all of the extra riders. That is a talking point a little bit on this course, I think, with maybe getting lost in the pack and not being well positioned. How important is positioning with this many people signing up? 226 right now, still with 5 minutes to go. I wouldn't be surprised if we have somewhere between 350 to 400, maybe more, by the time we hit that green light.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is going to be really about positioning going into that first climb up the reverse Watopia KOM. That's the longer of the 2 climbs. It's about like 3 minutes, 30 seconds long. Going into that climb, it's going to be all about positioning. You don't want to be in the back of the pack there because that climb kicks up very sharp right at the beginning, and that's where a lot of the separation is going to happen early on. So riders that find themselves in the back of the pack, first of all, they're going to be working hard, a little bit harder before that climb to try and move up to the front so they don't get gapped, they don't see those separations in the group. It's going to be really about positioning there. It's going to be about experience in Zwift, knowing the course, knowing when that climb's going to come.
Yeah, this climb is interesting. This on the first one we hit. We do head into the Ocean Boulevard, as everybody can see there, right from the get-go, and then it does head into the reverse climb, which is definitely extremely difficult from the get-go, and then it turns into somewhat a tactical climb before they hit the top of it. Then they head on down, finish out their lap, and then they hit Ocean Boulevard once again in the reverse direction, and then do have the steeper climb the second time around. They'll be doing 4 times up on the top of the Watopia forward and, 2 times over the reverse, 2 times over the forward KOM. Going to be a long race today, total of 58.8 kilometers. So a lot longer than the usual Zwift racing, Greg. I mean,
yeah, it is a bit longer.
The usual reality of Zwift racing is right around that 40-minute to an hour mark. I wouldn't be surprised if we're racing for an hour 20 to an hour and a half. It's going to be a little bit more about endurance, not just what do you got for 1 hour straight and just pure power going? How does that change things up here for those who might be able to win?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's going to play a little bit more on the rider's endurance. It's kind of become a tradition now. I mean, this is only our 2nd year of doing national championships on Zwift, but last year we did 3 laps of the volcano climb. It was also a bit longer at an hour 30 mark, like about a double the normal length of a Zwift race. So this is really going to rely on the riders endurance, and also their 1 minute, 3 minute power as well. So it's going to hit it's going to take someone who's very well rounded to win this race, which I think is a perfect thing in a national championship course. From the national championships that we've seen finish today already, the Swedish national championship finished in about an hour and 16 minutes, so a little bit shorter than last year's, which was almost at the hour 30-minute mark. So, we're looking at maybe 30 minutes longer than your standard Zwift race at this point.
All right, so not the hour and a half quite. Now defending champions for the UK, we're looking at Kim Little. Mm-hmm. We're looking at Cassie Baldy as far as the defending champions. But we are not. That is one thing that people need to know. We are not going to be crowning the champions during this race specifically. This is for the live qualifier for the top 10, and you must actually have a British cycling license in order to qualify for that top 10. So it's not going to be just the top 10 across the line. We'll announce what we see for the top 10 across the line. We'll definitely, as far as the preliminary results, but everything that we have during the live stream today, so just so everybody knows watching the stream, we'll talk about the preliminary results, but we'll have to wait for the official results announced later to know exactly who is going to get the invite, because it is invite only, and it does definitely have a few rules around who can make it into the live final out there for sure. So with 52 seconds to go, though, anything about that situation though with the live final? I know they're doing the obviously with the licensing. There's a lot of rules around that, but there's also pretty cool stuff around that live final event that we'll talk a lot about throughout the rest of the race out here today. But kind of a change up between the rest of the races that are going on today.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that British Cycling wanted to partner with Zwift to put on this event and offer sort of the first real British Cycling official esports national championship race. I think this is the future. Hopefully we'll see other national governing bodies put on something like this as well in future years. So, I'm really looking forward to see how this kind of pushes Zwift racing forward.
Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. Great kudos to British Cycling. But now here we go. We've got the watts are going to start popping here, and the orange numbers are going up, and it looks like from the get-go, we had about 400, just about almost 400, I think, jumping into the pens here. But let's go ahead and see how things start out for the men's race. The women's will be getting going in about 4:43, but it's 371, so almost 400 riders jumping in to try and take a spot in the live final. Top 10 will be invited if they've got all of the qualifications met for that. Moving forward, though, let's try and find the front end of this pack as we've got a lot of riders to work through. Excuse us on a little bit of the clicking through. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the world of Zwift, as I do make my way forward here, I do see Ian Bibby jumping in here from Madison Genesis. I did see a tweet from Madison Genesis Twitter account saying that they were going to be showing up looking to try and qualify for the live final. We are seeing Kim Little following right next to Ian Bibby, which is interesting to see because this is the current reigning and defending national champion for the UK for Zwift here. So good to see Kim Little out there and looking to defend and make that live final as well. Lavrek is there as well for Wahoo CH that we're seeing next to them. Dempster is there from Draft, and I did see some chatter about Dempster maybe being the favorite out there for Team Draft today, if I'm not incorrect there, Greg.
Yeah, Gavin Dempster has definitely been preparing hard for this race, kind of targeting this one. Looking at his training and his type of fitness, I think he's got a good shot at at least the top 10, maybe the win here. Another rider I see from Madison Genesis who's signed up for the race and is up here in the front is John Mould as well. So with Ian and John, both from Madison Genesis in the race, we could very easily see both of them be in the top 10 and end up at the live final, which is awesome. Seeing them in the KISS Super League. And then also in this race, all of these pros coming onto the Zwift platform, really pushing it forward. And now with British Cycling on board, like I said before, things are really just kind of heating up on Zwift.
Yeah, we are seeing lots of Madison Genesis show up. Joey Walker's out there as well, as you can see. Dempster following it up very closely to him there now. Looks like all the riders are starting to settle in. The initial group. This is the front pack that we are looking at right now that has made the initial split. There's definitely a split that's taken place immediately, though. It looks like we've got well over 100 riders in the front group right now, but we'll keep an eye out for when things do split again. Definitely want to be forward in the in this section of the course. We head into Ocean Boulevard, the underwater tunnel. That's what we're looking at right here. We will be heading uphill momentarily in order to exit Ocean Boulevard, and that little 3% gradient can be dangerous if you are too far back in the pack. There is a lot of times a split that does happen if they do kick hard enough over the top. Here we'll need to see 8 to 10 watts per kilogram probably from any attacks on the front end of the pack, but if that does happen, we may see a few who are sleeping at the back of this pack fall off the pace and not come back too quickly. Greg, speak to that a little bit as an experienced racer out on Zwift. I mean, that's this next section, of course. If you find yourself off the back and they're pressing the pace there, I mean, through the windmills into the marina section, that can be one of the most difficult closes to make, especially with very soon after there, the S-turns. You can really just end your race real early here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, coming out of this tunnel, you've got to expect everyone to be ramping it up. You know, at this point, when I see that right-hand turn coming up, we can see it on the mini-map here. It's almost it's a little bit more than a 90-degree turn. You know, you see it coming up. At this point, I want to be moving to the front because, you know, I don't want to get caught behind any kind of gap that forms here. Positioning is everything early in the race because, you know, every gap that you don't have to close, you know, like every gap you can avoid having to close yourself, is just a little bit extra energy you're going to have for those 4 climbs that are coming. And I know what's going through the mind of every rider in this race right now is, you know, just save energy, save energy, save energy.
Except for Kim Little. Kim Little seems to be thinking, let's just press the pace right off the front. I got to go ahead and defend this jersey. And it looks like Mold here knows exactly the wheel to follow up. Looks like John Mold jumping right onto Kim Little's wheel there, riding for the All-Stars in game today without the kit being showed off just yet. But Mold here looks like Hugo. Then there's going to be Madison Genesis with it is Mugridge here from Innovation, though. And a couple other from, it looks like Madison Genesis. GPM is here as well. Joey Walker following it up there. So a lot of the Madison Genesis boys here making this initial front split. I believe that might be happening here. You can see the riders are starting to string out. It isn't extremely difficult just yet to hold on. It is still bunched up a little bit. But if you do start seeing the string out in the middle of that pack here, you'll know that the pace is a little bit too high. Now, it does look like things are fairly calm at this point, though, only about 4.1 to 3.7 watts per kilogram. So let's go ahead and jump in real quick with the women's races. They are starting out from the pens now. And it looks like in the women's race, about 56 riders have shown up to the race today. They started about 5 minutes later than the men's. It looks like Dixon here from the KRT. It also looks like Danny Rowe has shown up on the day. Good to see her out there hammering away. That's going to be obviously a favorite out there with the pro tag next to the name. Pretty great to see her out there hammering away. Moving forward a little bit more, L. Brown here leading things out. So it looks like Grobler there as well from Revo. It's going to be Hobson Taylor there then right behind her at about 4.3 watts per kilogram to hold on to the front end of this group. Rachel Elliott out there, one of the strongest ladies we've ever seen out on Zwift from the community. It looks like she's showing up even after some of the injuries. We've seen her a lot lately. Well, not a whole ton, but another obvious, very obvious shout out here. We're seeing Lucy Charles out there, the pro triathlete, hammering away as well. Now, Zwift does a good job of differentiating those. You can see on the right-hand side of your screen right now, Lucy has a green pro jersey next to her name. That signifies that she is a professional triathlete. The orange pro jerseys that you do see next to the name are professional cyclist, and then the verified badges are significant individuals in the community that do have a verified badge. Just saying that somebody didn't just put that name into the game and then tried to steal that identity. So it verifies that that account is owned by whoever might have that name. out in the world of Zwift. So good to see Lucy Charles. We did see her take a second place last year in a sprint. We'll see if she shows up today, but she's got a few more pros to deal with out there, as we did see Danny Rowe. We're seeing, I believe, an elite athlete, S. Bird out there, Sharon Bird out there hammering away. So quite a few women here showing up with some serious caliber of racing. We're also seeing Walker out there as well. So, I mean, Greg, this is going to heat up to be a very hotly contested women's race out here today for the UK finals.
Yeah, absolutely. And the women's races that we've been watching recently have kind of a different personality than some of the men's races. They tend to break up into smaller groups, and it takes the riders end up kind of cooperating with each other, doing more of a team time trial type effort. So some of these elite triathletes that we see out there might have the fitness to take this down today, because if they can get into one of those small groups and sort of team time trial off the front. If someone like Lucy Charles has a little bit of a sprint and can get off the front, maybe she could take it down. But again, what they're really looking for today is just to get into that top 10. So the tactics might be a little different than usual, where you're just going for the top spot.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, a lot of times, getting away is extremely important. As just a few riders, but with it being a top 10 situation, some might be able to settle in and say, look, I think I can take the sprint. Danny Rowe being amazing on the track, obviously, she's going to be looking for that sprint finish. She might even allow a couple to get off the front and say, I have the power in order to take down a sprint. I'm confident in the sprint situation here, so it might change things up a little bit as far as the tactics go for Danny out there for sure. Up against a rider like Lucy Charles, she might not want to go head to head in a straight up who's got the FTP situation between those two riders. We'll have to see how that ends up playing out. But Lucy here on the front at 4.9 watts per kilogram almost, 147 beats per minute. I mean, Lucy obviously having a crazy engine at this kind of a pace toward the front end of the pack right now.
Absolutely. And one thing I was thinking about was, suppose a group of 10 gets off the front of this thing. Now, normally in a race like this, a group of 10 is going to have some serious dilemma on their hands of who's going to work, because, that group wants to stay away from the group behind, but no one wants to be tired for the sprint. But in this situation where, the top 10 are going to go to the live final, that all 10 of them having some incentive to work together. So, if we see a small group come off the front of this thing, they'll have some incentive to stay away.
That's for sure. I mean, the reality is if you lock in 3 to 5 off the front, you know that you're most likely going as long as you meet all of the criteria for your British cycling license. So we do see Kim Little here. We're looking at on the right-hand side of the screen. You can see the rider that I'm currently highlighting. You can also see their watts per kilogram that are currently being highlighted on the right-hand screen. In the upper left-hand of the screen, for those of you who might not be familiar with Zwift, you do see their current wattage as well as their beats per minute and their RPMs that they are currently putting out in real life on their trainer, wherever they are located in the world. Usual rules do apply here for the high-end, high-caliber races that have a little bit on the line. Obviously, with the live final, we got a little bit on the line here today. So heart rate monitors are required, as well as a verifiable, credible power source that will be determined by the judges of the race. Smart Trainers power meters usually going to qualify. Z-Power cannot take the W or qualify for the live finals, for those of you who are wondering out there in the world of the viewership here. So looking forward here, though, on the attack, it is going to be Ashley there for Team Innovation. It looks like about 419 watts, 159 beats per minute. Let's speak a little bit to the first time up from the top of this climb, the reverse KOM. What is this all about for this climb here, Greg? I mean, this is the situation where it does become very tactical. You get the initial kick up into that almost 11-12% gradient, I think, and then it calms down into almost a little bit of a road tactic, find the draft for the final kick up on the top of the KOM draft. I think, a lot of times things cool down here, and then people kind of fight for that KOM almost over the top just to hang on.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. I mean, really, all of the damage is done at the beginning of this climb. There's that initial kick of 10 up to 14%, I think. It all happens within the first 30 seconds of this climb. The last 3 minutes climb are very gradual. I mean, there's even a little bit of a descent in here. I think they're about to hit it. But basically, it climbs at about a 4% average gradient. So, all of these riders are hurting, but there's not too much incentive to really push the pace on the front because there's still a lot of draft going on here. You can see these riders hammering on the front, and all those riders behind are just kind of sitting in. So, they hit the top of the KOM banner there all together still. I really do think that today most of the damage is going to be done on the forward KOM. The forward KOM is just relentless for a minute 30, a minute 40. This reverse KOM is going to sap the legs of some of these riders, but I don't think we're going to see too much separation happen on this reverse KOM.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. Almost an attack here from Hugo, though. He had an aero power up, and maybe this is just to soften up the legs of some of the chasers out there. The reality is they do have a little bit of a gap, it looks like, between those who might not be at quite the caliber of some of the other racers here. So maybe just trying to whittle it down a little bit. I mean, there is the reality of, 50 riders is a lot nicer than 100. To have to battle it out against if it does come down to a sprint situation here. So with a couple of aero power-ups, though, having power-ups fully available, though, in the entirety of the race, interesting to see them throwing them down so early in a 58-kilometer race. Maybe they're just rolling the dice a little bit and saying, I'll probably get another one out there. Of course, they are going through, what is it going to be? It's going to be the lap banner, the sprint banner, as well as the KOM banner every lap. So that is 3 chances to grab another aero power-up. The chances are fairly high, so maybe at this point the tactic with those power-ups, if you do have them, is that I'll most likely have a fairly solid chance of grabbing another aero power-up before the end of the race. I mean, conserving energy versus making sure you got the aero power-up. What would be your tactic there, Greg? I mean, it's a little risky. Aero power-up is pretty strong.
Yeah, my tactic with the arrow is always you got to hoard the helmet. I mean, you hang on to that thing until the sprint. It's just so powerful. It's so powerful in a sprint. If you're going for the win, you've got to have an arrow power up at the end. But again, these guys are trying to get top 10 here. So, maybe the tactic is that you want to save as much energy. You want to maybe use as many power-ups as you can just to save that energy and try to get into that top 10. So, I think with the difference in this race, we could be seeing some different tactics going on here, both with riding style, the kind of efforts they're putting out, but also power-up usage.
Yeah, we are seeing as far as the breaks go at this point, there is a little bit of a separation that did take place, it looks like, between the main peloton that we have here, the front group at this point. Moving backwards just a little bit to see if we can find what that is. It's going to be 58 total that are heading into the S's here within the men's race. 8 tenants on the back here, it looks like, with Jay Vickers just ahead of him, holding as they head into the S's here for their next half of their first lap out on the Watopia Figure 8 course. That's what we are on today. Watopia Figure 8, 2 laps total. It's going to be a total of 58 kilometers. So we are 12.5 kilometers in, 14 minutes it took to complete that. Now, as they head into the SEs here, this is a section where some things could take place. We could see a couple of attacks through here, but let's definitely head on over to the women's races. They are starting their first climb up and over the top of the reverse Watopia KOM now. And Lucy Charles on the front here. 5.0 watts per kilogram coming from the professional triathlete out of the UK. Now, Rachel Elliott following it very closely there. Now, if Rachel has the form, this will be interesting. I mean, I would be surprised. She says she has been training a little bit here and there. She has had like a fairly serious health, obviously concern out there, an injury, but has come back and bounced back very strong. And as far as being able to still participate in the world of cycling, Zwift is the way to go for her at this point. And this is going to be interesting. I mean, she is a competitor. I've seen her win some serious Zwift races in real-life events she's been invited to. So watch out for Rachel Elliott. If she does have the form, she might be able to get away with a few riders. And if you got a pack off the front of any race, Rachel Elliott is one that you want to have in. Even at 85% form, this woman can TT like no other. So, if this does get away, I'd be watching out for her to be able to drive the pace with the likes of Dixon as well as Lucy Charles there and Bird. I mean, this is a lady not to mess with off the front with any kind of a break, Greg.
Absolutely, and somehow she always finds herself in that front group. Rachel, in addition to her incredible athletic prowess, is also just like one of the classiest riders, one of the most popular riders on Zwift. She's I think she's a great asset to the community. So it's really great to see her back on Zwift at the front of this national championship group.
Looking at the back of the pack here, I mean, this might whittle down very quickly to a situation where only two in the group are going to be able to still make the qualifications for that live final here. And the reality is not all of the riders may be able to have the criteria to make it. So if you are in the chase group, you still want to sprint it out. There's the reality that even if 10 get away, the chase group might still be able to make the live final on some sort of a qualification. So it's going to be everything you got all the way to the line. Looks like Gardner there making her way on the across to the front now with a little of attack maybe. Brewer there for Fearless now, as you can see, making her way to the front as well. Lucy sitting at a solid 4.7. Lucy Child has been sitting at nothing less than, it seems like, 4.5 to 5 watts per kilogram. And looking for wheels over and over again here. This is interesting to see. If we're going to see her at a 4.0 plus the entirety of the race, talk about some serious power here coming from the professional triathlete. Ooh. I would love to know what she did at Kona this year and if she's even close to threshold at this point, Greg.
This is like a sprint workout for her at an hour, hour 20 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that is definitely reality with the amount of time that they put in at threshold or just below at that tempo pace for the professional triathletes at the Ironman level here. So we'll see though how this ends up playing out here. I have a feeling she's going to want to try and get away with the likes of Rowe and Bird as well as Elliott there. I have a feeling we maybe see a break like that coming fairly soon. We'll see what kind of time is pulled over the top of the KOM here for the women's race. There was a solid 3:23, which is an extremely fast time over the top for the men's here. Rich Elliott, now a little bit of a kick off the front there for the KISS Racing team toward the front end of the pack. You see them in the blue and orange striped kit there as Rachel takes the KOM at 4:05 with Wilkins followed up by Gardner, and it's going to be Dixon and Sharon Bird there across the Rhine riding for Vision in game, I believe. Moving forward, then Gardner, Bradbury now 10 kilometers in, 14-minute total of racing for the women at this point. It looks like the lead group now has solidified with a 21-second gap back to L. Brewer there, followed up by M and for the KCRT. And still a lot of the expected racers still involved at the front end of this race. All of the pros have made the front group, as well as most of the, actually all the verified badges have made it as well. So it is going to be 15 riders off the front into this. So 5 not going to be able to make the qualifications if they find themselves off the back of this or in a sprint situation. It'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out here. So back into the men's race, though, I can see that they've put out a solid almost 5 watts per kilogram in the men's race so far, and it is 56 riders, it looks like, at this point in the men's race that are still battling it out. It looks like 1 or 2 have fallen off the back. There is a solid chase group here with Pink. Looks like S Sports Nutrition, Openshaw there, Kit Robertson, then and Sweatman trying to make this chase. Can this come back? That's the question, I think, Greg. It's quite the ask with almost a minute in this kind of firepower at the front end of the race at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so difficult to pull back gaps like this. All the firepower's in that front group, and there's so many of them that even though no one's really going to take the initiative to pull, they're going to be coming through at 4 or 5 watts per kilogram. It's going to be real hard for them to catch up. And, going into that forward KOM, I think we're just going to see some more extension on this gap.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. I mean, the forward KOM here. So the next section, of course, they obviously are heading back on the reverse section of the Ocean Boulevard now. They will head back down into the underground tunnel, and then it will be an immediate left-hand turn into the climb, open over the top of the forward KOM. That section, of course, is the most crucial by far for this race out here and for who's going to make the next split. The reason being is when you exit Ocean Boulevard, you have that 3, 4, 5% gradient. It's actually a little steeper on this side, a little bit longer it seems. And then there's an immediate left-hand turn into the forward KOM, which isn't everything you got 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes or so. I mean, full on 7 watts per kilogram, most likely, maybe 6 to 7 watts per kilogram for the likes of this group. So it's going to definitely be the crucial point. I would not be surprised one bit for anybody who might be on the rivet, a little bit at their limit at this point, or a little bit under kind of riding tempo, not able to rest up enough. That will be a section where they will find themselves split off the back. So a lot of riders are going to be thinking at this point about that next juncture of the course. But as far as who has still made, I'm going to call out a couple of the favorites here that are still in and amongst this group right now. We are seeing Cameron Jeffers is out there for the Cycling Hub, actually. Good to see him out there racing. Ian Bibby, obviously, from Madison Genesis. We still got Joey Walker and John Mold up there for Madison Genesis. Looks like George Prim is in there as well. So 4, even 5, 6 of the Madison Genesis boys have showed up. Tom Moses is out there, as well as it looks like Johnny McEvoy, actually. So Madison Genesis with 6 riders still in and amongst the lead group. If they can really press the pace up on the top of the forward KOM, that is going to be a serious threat. They could have almost a team time trial off the front if they really show up with that kind of an attack and get it organized. Anybody that is thinking about the team to follow, they're going to be thinking about, I think, Madison Genesis at this point. I mean, there is the reality of when a team shows up that's got that kind of a strength on the day, they're what everyone's thinking about and who they're going to follow. And if they're all waiting for this next section of the course, I think they're waiting for them to pounce rather than maybe attack the likes of Madison Genesis with 6 riders out there looking for that live final.
Yeah, and I think, all these riders are feeling a little bit nervous right now. They don't know what kind of power the other riders have in their legs. I think there's going to be a little bit of some posturing on this forward KOM. The riders are going to be looking to kind of show off what they have. Maybe some reverse posturing. Maybe some people are going to hold back a little bit and kind of pretend they don't have it. So we'll see. Two riders I want to call out here. I notice Steve Young and James Phillips from the Canyon team are up in this front group as well. Both excellent sprinters. So if these guys can make it over the climbs with this front group, they definitely have a shot in a bunch sprint.
That's a great point, actually, with the newer elite team that is a Zwift team, specifically a Zwift team fully supported by Canyon. The Canyon ZCC team, I mean, interesting to see them showing up. And this is kind of an opportunity, these national championships, to mix it up with the pro teams a little bit and show what they've got to bring to the table here. Steve Young, James Phillips, there'll be a lot on their shoulders, though, today, I think. I know Phillips is a little bit more of a well-rounded rider. Young, if he can make it over the climbs, I'd be watching out for him in the sprints. I know Phillips does have a good sprint, but I don't think it's quite as strong as Young's. So Phillips, I would be looking at him more as the all-arounder that can make it over the climbs and still hit the sprints for the Canyon team.
Absolutely. And, he's been coming off an injury as well, so he might be out there as Steve Young's domestique at this point, which is great because, he probably does need that with such firepower in this group. Someone maybe to close some gaps and, having ridden with James Phillips before, I know he's got the engine to shut down gaps and make sure that Steve stays in this front group.
Looking at the power-ups that are being thrown now, good point on the support there for Young. We'll see if his sprint is on point. I mean, he's been battling it out in the KSL there and unable to show up, it looks like, against the Madison Genesis boys. So we'll see if he's able to do so today. We are seeing, though, it looks like Elsthorpe here for Velo 1 Cycling now at the front with a little bit of an aero power up, maybe a little preemptive there, or just trying to hang on at this point at 175 beats per minute with that kick up and out of the underwater tunnel there off of Ocean Boulevard. Been taking a left-hand turn out of Ocean Boulevard. This is where the race is really going to come to the who's got the numbers, who's got the power to make it over the top of the climb together here, because they're about to hit one of the most difficult times of their life. It's only a minute and a half, but it's everything you got, pure shuffling over the top of the forward KOM. And this is one of the most iconic, Watopia Zwift climbs. This was the first climb that you would be introduced to when you jumped into Zwift before all of the other courses were here. This was it. This was the climb. This is what the KOM is all about. And now we can see it's going to be at the front with the orange numbers. The first one to go is going to be Bibby, it looks like. Laverick is there going as well. We do see it looks like Phillips, Kim a little toward the front, but it's going to be Joey Walker from Madison Genesis leading things out in the red, black, and blue kit. There. Innovation now making the way to the front there. Ashley followed up by Lindsay now. Madison Genesis, though, 6.6 watts per kilogram, following very closely there, but up into 190 beats per minute already now. Genesis then still with, it looks like Bibby, though. He has been their climber in the KISS Super League. Kevin Little now knows what wheel to follow as he sits on that wheel. Followed up very closely there by Lindsay. Right behind them, it is going to be Gavin Dempster in the draft kit. We were speaking about him. He has been tapering, looking specifically to this race to try and make that live final. Now an arrow power up, though, from Ashley. This is going to break things apart because that still, even though it's just a reduce on the CDA, the reduce on the drag of the athlete there, it is most definitely going to speed him up. 33 kilometers per hour on the uphill at 485 watts. We haven't seen much under 7 watts per kilogram on this climb. Christopher Durham, though, out of UK here, the U23 rider. Watch out for him. He's been Zwifting since beta. And definitely an upper-comer riding for the Race 3R team here, supported by, a team supporting WBR. Absolutely awesome to see him out there. Watch out for that U23 rider. Very strong individual. And at 8.9 watts per kilogram right now, Durham, I know, has been at some training camps as well with his team in real life. So Durham here at the front showing that he's showing up to take the W as well, at least get into that top 10. It'd be really cool to see a U23 rider like him who's come up through the community of racing and riding out on Zwift, be able to get to that live final and show what he's got in the world of cycling here with the likes of Madison Genesis riding right next to him there. Now we do see Dempster there in the red draft kit that's made his way into this lead pack, but the splits are happening. Cameron Jeffers here trying to get on terms, it looks like there. McCullough there as well. Young now from the Canyon team. Where's the split, though? That's going to be the question. Riders just trying to do everything they can to find the wheels in front of them. Canyon Iceberg's out there as well. With the arrow power up, there's a counter, actually. Arrow power up off the front, and this is a perfect time to do it. Speak to this a little bit. Tenet here for Canyon Iceberg now. With that, was that an attack or... What's happening? Or was he just trying to make sure he didn't get off the back there? I thought maybe it was a counter because that's a good time to go if you can hold the speed. But, you don't usually see it successful.
Yeah, I suspect what happened there was he hit the arrow power up to get back in this group and just kind of overshot the group because we saw him once he went off the front kind of back it down below 4 watts per kilogram. So I don't think that was a proper attack. I think he was just trying to... save a little energy and get back in this group and ended up putting out a little too much energy.
When we speak to that a little bit, actually, there is a reality of racing out on Zwift that takes a lot of gameplay experience. You can waste a lot of energy trying to find wheels that you already have. You can waste a lot of energy trying to find a draft that you're already in or get back to a group and you didn't realize how quickly you were coming up to that pack. And since you don't feel the air on your face, you don't feel the draft physically, the nuances of the in real life riding, you don't actually have that eye to hand coordination, etc., the coordination of exactly what the depth is to the wheel in front of you.
Right, so that biofeedback.
You don't have that feedback, exactly. So without that, there's a lot of experience that comes with not wasting energy out on Zwift. I mean, that's something that a lot of people have been practicing, it seems like, and those who get it down, they definitely have a lot more matches to burn at the end of a race.
Yeah, riding on Zwift enough, you build up kind of an instinct about exactly how much effort you have to put in, just exactly how much you can measure out the energy just enough to get on that wheel. And so you're never putting out too much. You're never shooting off the front of the group. You're just kind of easing onto the wheel in front of you like you would outside, where you have all the feedback of the wind and the draft. You can use your brakes. You can move into the wind and things like that. In Zwift, it's a little bit harder. You have to build up that instinct over many, many races of exactly how to measure out your effort.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of times the inability to measure it perfectly there does end up punishing riders out there. And the watts per kilogram tends up being way higher than it needs to be in and amongst the group here. We do see the chase group here with C. Ward. It's going to be M. Scott there as well as M. Mason there, trying to get back on terms with that group with 25 seconds. And we said that would be the moment, was that climb. And it looks like, as far as who is able to make the front group up and over the top of the most crucial climb out on course, the forward KOM on the Watopia Figure 8. We're almost done with the first lap of the Watopia Figure 8. First lap of 2 will be a total of 58 kilometers out there today. We're 26.4 into the race right now. It is going to be 38 riders, I believe it is, that have made this front group. A lot of the favorites are out there for sure. As we do see the verified badges next to their name. Madison Genesis out there. We do see, it looks like Iceberg, as well as it looks like quite a few of the All-Stars have made that. Is Kim Little in and amongst this group? I believe he has made it to the front end. That is the defending national champion, Zwift national champion for the UK. I haven't seen his name just yet. I'd be surprised if he didn't make it.
Yeah, he's still in there.
And there he is,
Yeah, he's
on
still
the
in
All-Stars on the left-hand side of the course there. He is sporting the Zwift All-Stars kit, as you can see, with the orange, white, and blue out there today. So back in with the women's race, though. Let's see how things are playing out as they do head through Ocean Boulevard. They're going to be heading into their crucial point out on course here, as the men are entering into the sprint section and heading into their forward Essies attempt here. It is going to be, again, Lucy Charles here, steady 3.9 watts per kilometer as they do exit Ocean Boulevard on that little bit of a 3% uphill gradient. This is going to be the first kick we see before they hit their climb, that left-hand turn that we did see break things apart onto the forward KOM. So it's going to be the next crucial point for the women. Dixon there is making her way forward there, it looks like, for the KRT team. Mary Wilkinson, did not notice her in the pack immediately, but as she was coined at some of the live events, Scary Mary, not one to be trifled with, that's for sure, when it comes to some of the climbs out there, I think. She was a finalist in the Zwift Academy this past year as well. I mean, Mary Wilkinson, that's another one in and among. I mean, this is like super high caliber. The UK has shown up with some of the, and within the women's race especially, this is like the who's who of Zwift racing amongst women.
Absolutely. I had an opportunity to meet Mary Wilkinson in Vancouver for a race, and I will say, while she's not scary, she's a very intense racer. She stays very focused. Before she gets on the bike, you can see on her face the focus she has, that she's just visualizing that she's going to absolutely smash all of the other racers in the group. And so I can see how she's earned her nickname, Scary Mary. Although I will say her personality isn't so scary off the bike.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, the nicest that she can be. I've seen her some interviews, and I've seen her, in the social medias and stuff, and definitely one of the nicest people I've ever been acquainted with. But when it comes to the seriousness on the bike, the determination of this woman to take down a race is definitely there. You can just see it in the expressions of the face there. But it's going to be Lucy Charles setting things up well for the climb on the forward KOM, it looks like here. 5.7 watts per kilometer. Chasing down Bradbury, that had a little bit of an early excitement there, it looked like, off the front. But now Charles, as the climb does start into that initial 6% gradient, the riders will be feeling that gradient out there if they are on a smart trainer. Dixon now the next one to take over the front, but it's going to be Sharon Bird here now. It looks like 158 beats per minute coming from her, riding for Vision out there on course now. 10% gradient. This is definitely the first point on the climb that you can see any kind of separation, with the gradients getting extremely steep there. On the back, it is going to be Charles, actually. Is she going to be able to hang on through here with that mainly threshold type efforts coming from Charles? It's going to be into the VO2s, I think, here that's really going to matter. Rachel Elliott making her way to the front there for the KRT, able to hang on. Bradbury, who had the initial kick into the climb, now making her way backwards at 190 beats per minute. Rose Pryor is here as well, 201 beats per minute. Grubler there for Revo now. And it looks like Charles is on the back here, 4.7 watts per kilometer, 160 beats per minute. Maybe just biding her time, or maybe is it too much threshold at this point? We did see her fairly calmly at 145. Going to want to get herself moving forward, though, at this point, and not backwards, as she needs to close this gap. If this does go out, these ladies are going to be very happy to put the pressure on with the likes of Lucy Charles off the back. Sharon Bird, now we can see Rachel Elliott there as well, is making the front end of this group right now. And as we do see, there is a feather power up here coming from Rachel Elliott. Rachel up into 6.4 watts per kilogram. I saw a little bit of chatter from her in the social saying, no big deal, showing up and not really expecting any big expectations. Well, she is definitely showing up and smashing any expectations at this point, as she is off the front with Sharon Bird right now, 6.4 watts per kilogram, and Rachel Elliott smashing the pedals and smashing this KOM. 2-second gap right now. Dixon from the KRT, Mary Wilkinson following it up there. It looks like Gardner as well as Blaney trying to close that gap. Not sure this is going to go anywhere. You were talking about the animation, though, of the women's race being sometimes a little bit more of an exciting race, not so much holding hands, not so much kind of looking at each other, but really just animating the race a lot more. There's a numbers game there, as there's just not quite as many women, but I think there's also just the reality of like the discrepancies of abilities. There's just a little bit more leeway to make things happen, I think, and I think that's what's happening here with Elliott and Sharon. Not quite as scared to just put the attack down and try and break things apart here, Greg.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, smaller groups just break up easier, and you know that's part of it. And I think experienced riders like Rachel Elliott know that, and probably that's what's responsible for this little attack we saw here. You know, what we saw there basically up that climb is Lucy Charles was paying the debt that she accrued during all those threshold efforts on the front of the group up into this forward KOM. So it'll be interesting to see if she sits on the front of the group after after this KOM.
Yeah, after the initial climb here, it does look like she was able to make it there. Maybe just biding her time, not playing it, playing too many cards early on here. Lucy still able to make this front group, it looks like, and it will be a lead group of, looks to be 7 or 8 riders, I believe it is, that have made this front group. So they're going to be 2 spots off the back here. Danny Rowe, who I would be definitely one of the favorites in a sprint, has found herself off the back, though, on that climb here. Murray, Rose Pryor there as well as Brewer working together with Danny here, and we'll see if they can close that down. But with the likes of Charles and Elliott on that front group here, definitely not going to want to be coming into a sprint with the likes of Danny Rowe. Most likely going to continue to press the pace there so that pro track riders not going to be involved with the all-out wattage bazooka that we'd most likely see from her in that final sprint. But there is a reality that it is the top 10 verified British cycling license holders. So Danny still having a chance to make the live final here. Still a chance to close it down on lap number 2 of the Watopia Figure 8. Plenty of racing left to go here. Still 24 kilometers of racing to go here. So we're about exactly halfway through the race here for the women, and we'll see if they can get back on terms with that front group. But with 26 seconds, I do believe it might be said and done for this chase group, as these ladies are not going to want to see any of those sprinters come back in here, and they're just going to be kind of working together, I would think, to make sure, or at least some of the motivated riders that at this point, there's a reality that if you make this lead group, you meet all the qualifications, as long as you don't get caught, you're going to the live final. So they're going to be extremely motivated to work as a team at this point.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I was getting at with at the top of this race, is that you get away in a small group like this, and there's definitely going to be some cooperation. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing these women chat with each other about taking turns pulling and things like that. It is a little bit harder to take turns pulling in Zwift. It's harder than it is in the real world, because when you're riding outside, you can get in the pace line and you get a lot of visual cues about when you should pull. In Zwift, it's a little bit harder, and so it takes a lot of cooperation, a lot of communication to actually put on a proper pace line. So it'll be interesting to see if they manage to organize something like that. Now, the reality could be Lucy Charles might just sit on the front of this thing and smash it for the rest of the race.
Back in with the men's race, though, we do see the gap, though. Lucy Charles involved there. Bird, Dixon, Wilkinson, Bradbury for the women's race. Obviously, Rachel Elliott in there, who was the initiator of this lead group, though. And the break, Rachel Elliott really showing up on the day here. But in the men's race, we're back in. It looks like we've got Tori here from Vitus Pro Cycling out of the UK now with an attack on Ocean Boulevard before they even hit the exit out of Ocean Boulevard. This is going into their second lap. The men have just started their second lap. There were about 38 riders, it looked like, that did make the lead group. It was still containing the likes of most of the Madison Genesis. I think all the Madison Genesis boys have made it. The defending champion, Kim Little's out there. It looks like Cameron Jeffers has made it as well. But Vitus Pro Cycling here with Tori showing up at the front here. He is a part of the KISS Super League here and been getting his Zwift legs underneath him. His results have been getting better and better every week here, and it looks like he's learned a little bit about how to attack the packs and when to do so. Had a little bit of a gap there, gets closed right on down. 194 beats per minute currently coming from Tori right now. Moving to the front, though, it is going to be Joey Walker here for Madison Genesis. It's going to be Zone as well as Kim Little. Jeffers here now for the Wahoo Cycling Hub team as well is making himself known, it looks like, at 173 beats per minute. Again, for those of you who might be just tuning in, you are watching the British Cycling eRacing qualifiers, championship qualifiers for Zwift out here. We are doing 2 laps of the Watopia Figure 8. This is a total of 58 kilometers, and we are just starting our final lap for the men. The women will be heading into their final lap here in just a moment as well. And with about 38 riders that have made the front group for the men's race now, out of 371, it's been really hotly contested. Now, on each lap, let's take a quick look at the course once more because we may be having just a few who are just tuning in here. This is the course on the day. We've done 1 lap already, 29.8 total for the each distance as well as the elevation. Each lap will be 234. The main climb we are looking at is that second climb as far as the crucial point out on course. We are heading into the first climb, though, for the men here in just a moment. Again, it is more of a initial kick into a tactical climb where you can sit in a little bit more up over the top of the reverse. The forward KOM, though, that second climb is definitely the one that is going to be a race decider out there. Greg seems to think we're going to have a sprint finish. Still thinking it's going to be a sprint finish with the group there, Greg? Not split up?
Well, I think we will see a little bit more animation. I wouldn't be surprised if Madison Genesis tries a little something here to split it up and try to get a few of their guys in the front. One thing is they probably want to bring several people to that live final to try and get that national championship jersey on the back of one of their riders. So they're going to be looking to get as much firepower into the live final as possible. And that means what they need to do is they don't want to be gambling on a bunch sprint in the end because, there's just so many variables in a bunch sprint. They might end up with only 1 or 2 guys moving on to the live final. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try a little something on one of these climbs to try and split it up. Right now they have 6 riders in this group, a lot of firepower, and they have a lot of matches to burn, I suspect. So I do think we'll see some more animation from them. We might see some animation from someone like Kim Little just pushing it up. We saw him we saw him push it up. What was it, coming out of the tunnel on the first lap? So he doesn't seem to be intimidated by the firepower in this group.
Yeah, they're heading into the second time over the top of the reverse Watopia KOM here. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of attacks here. It has been fairly quiet from Madison Genesis as well as Kim Little, the defending champion. Innovations seem to be the ones that kind of pushing the pace toward the front end of the group at any point. I would have a feeling that perhaps with the softening up the legs, we've got a lap in, we've got 2 times over the top of the KOM so far. We may see a little bit of something over the top of the reverse KOM. My guess, though, is that all the matches most likely are going to be going in. Any kind of attacks that might be taking place are most likely going to be going into that forward KOM for Madison Genesis. But like you said, there is a lot of firepower. When you've got 6 riders amongst 38, you've got a pretty good chance for taking down the sprint. And if you were able to get, essentially, if you're able to get 6 Madison Genesis riders into the live final, you've got a pretty amazing chance of getting them all on the podium there too. So it would be pretty. I'd be pretty motivated to try and get away to just create a team time trial situation. Again, though, if you do that, there is the reality that you've got 32 riders there working against Madison Genesis, and as we all know, the drafting. Let's speak a little bit to that. I mean, the drafting out on Zwift is very strong, and the pack can pretty quickly close things down. 6 riders, though, off the front, if they were to put all of them into an attack, that is enough to really take advantage of the what they call the blob in the community as far as like how much it really matters.
Yeah, for sure. And, it probably wouldn't be just the 6 of them. You'd probably have some of the stronger riders like Kim Little, some of the guys from Canyon up there as well. And, the reality is, again, if you get 10 people into a front group, they're going to have a lot of incentive to work together. And 10 is absolutely enough to take advantage of the draft, rest up a little bit, punch it on the front, and keep the speed high.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point there as well. I do think it would be really difficult to get all of them in there, and if you try and put 6 off the front, you're usually going to get a couple grabbing onto a wheel here or there. But Madison Genesis here, as we were speaking about, maybe going to be ones that were instigators, and here comes the instigation from Joey Walker now. Ashley there from Innovation is following it up very closely though. And it looks like the arrow power-up now being thrown down by Ashley. Now, we've seen a lot of very early power-ups here from some of these riders, which is not the usual. Usually, we do see the hoarding of those power-ups, holding on to them and making sure that you have them for the sprint here. But we've seen a lot more risk being taken here. I think it has something to do with how many riders have made this lead group. Only 10 are going, with 38 total in this group. They want to really break this apart, and I think Ashley, that's the thing. You keep speaking to this. With it being 10 riders, there's the reality that break it apart. Let's get it down to 10, because if we get it down to 10, I'm in. So use the power up to make it 10, because it's not just about the sprint now. Tactics totally change.
Yeah, and Stu Ashley isn't a sprinter. He doesn't want to gamble on that bunch sprint, and I think this is absolutely changing the dynamics of the race, because guys who aren't sprinters don't want to gamble in getting into the top 10 in a bunch sprint. They want to work early. We've seen Stu Ashley now use 2 arrow power-ups on climbs. So he's, his game plan is clear. He doesn't want this to go into a sprint. He wants to go into that he wants to go into the finish line with 10 or fewer riders in the front group.
And that would definitely be my tactic for sure. If I knew I did not have sprinter legs out there, I would want things to break apart. And it looks like he was able to do just that. Looking backwards now, we do see a 7-second gap here to Wales there. It looks like McEvoy there coming from Madison Genesis has been chopped off. Genesis now down to 5 riders instead of 6. A little bit of work has been done by the innovation team. 26 riders now in this main group. Andy Babb here trying to close it down at 161, 353. Watts right now in the upper left-hand corner, you see from Andy right now. Not sure he's going to be able to close this down. Wales there now, 6 seconds is the difference there. The gap, I mean, you can see down below, it's not even within that 50 meters just yet. They're going to have to put in a monstrous effort here on the front end, though it does look like. Pete Christopher from the Dream Team, actually. Zwift Academy Dream Team did not see that Christopher was in here. Good to see him out here. It looks like with the final kicks up and over the top of the reverse KOM are happening here. Laverick here from Wahoo Cycling Hub now with Ashley, who continues to push these pace and trying to break things apart. Look at the ones who are just trying to find a wheel behind. Do not get dropped off at this point, because if you do, you may not see the front end of that group again. The speeds really start to pick up as they head downhill here. It looks like just barely grabbing on. It looks like it will be at the back of this pack. A couple of riders there just sneaking on as they were almost dropped off. Again, that time over the top with those attacks from Ashley there as well as Madison Genesis, almost 10 seconds faster over the reverse KOM here. This is crazy efforts. I mean, that was one of the fastest times I've ever seen up on the top of the reverse KOM there with a 3:14. They must have been pushing 6 watts per kilogram plus on the front all the way to the top there as they head into their final half a lap, 40 kilometers in, 50 minutes of racing done. I'm predicting a sub 1:15 race time here, Greg.
Yeah, this is looking real fast. In fact, that time up the reverse KOM falls about the 3rd fastest time ever that's been put down during a race on Zwift. Actually, the in the Polish National Championship, there was a 3:13. So it's not the fastest we've seen today during the National Championship races, but in this case, it was the whole pack that did that. In the Polish National Championship, it was just one rider. So this is probably the fastest group we've seen today, which absolutely makes sense. You've got the likes of Madison Genesis in there, Kim Little, Canyon, riders from Innovation, and so forth. Definitely tons of talent in this race.
Huge amounts of talents in this race. These guys are definitely chomping at the bit to get into the live final. Again, for those of you who are wondering, for this race specifically, this is all about an invitation to the top 10 to the British Cycling Championship live final. So the top 10 riders that are holding on to a British cycling license that qualify and at the end of the race that get into that top 10 and meet all the requirements, they will be getting an invite to the live final for the men's and the women's race. In the men's race, we did just have the last time over the top of the reverse KOM, and we do have what looks to be 26 riders that are able to make this lead group. So 26 will be heading into the Essies here and into the final climb after Ocean Boulevard. It'll be a left-hand turn onto the forward KOM, and those will be the moments to be watching out for. That is going to be the crucial moment if anybody is able to break away and make this a non-sprint situation. I would not be surprised if any of the riders who have a solid FTP, a solid VO2 max situation, but not a good sprint, who are not very confident going up against 26 other riders, for them to try and break things apart on that forward KOM. I am predicting we're going to get a 135-ish or so on that forward KOM. I mean, it's going to be absolutely everything you got to the top of that climb there. We'll be waiting to see what the what was the time over the top? I think they were pulling like a 145 or so the first time over the top or something along those. It wasn't everything they had. It definitely was not everything they had at that point. It was fairly all in. It did bring things apart, but I'm feeling like there's quite a few matches being saved up by these Madison Genesis boys, as they seem to just be following wheels up to this point and not really sending anything off the front.
Yeah, I believe they did a 135. I think the front few riders did about 135 the first time up. Which is that's a painful effort. But it's not in the fastest we've seen. It kind of becomes exponentially hard to reduce the amount of time it takes on that KOM. The difference between a 135 and a 130 is a lot of pain. And the fact here is, these guys are now tired. They just did one of the fastest ever reverse KOM. So if they do hit that forward KOM at that same effort they did last time, I think we're going to see a lot of attrition from this group. I mean, we might even dwindle it down to 10. But I think we're definitely going to see a lot of riders falling off.
For the men's situation there, it is getting into 53, almost an hour plus, anybody who's been in there. But we're back in with the women here. Sharon Bird suddenly on the scene. Sharon has been showing up recently and been seeing her hit a lot of podiums, a lot of the attacks, a lot of these breakaway groups here. So Sharon hammering away, as you can see here, currently holding on to the fastest time on the reverse KOM. No, is that going to be the forward KOM? I believe it is on this direction. They're going to be heading in the women's race, though, to their reverse KOM here. And for those of you who are just tuning in for who has made this lead group, we've got the likes of Lucy Charles, pro triathlete here, Ironman specialist here. Absolutely going to be one of the major threats in this situation. Dixon's out there as well. We are seeing Danny Rowe, though, currently sitting in 9th place in a chase group off the back here. This is one of the most qualified professionals, that's for sure. I believe world championships underneath the belt there. So, Olympics. I mean, this is a top sprinter here. But the reality of the group up ahead, they wanted to break things apart and not take this to a sprint, I believe, with Danny Rowe here. And Danny here on the chase now, her chances now are going to come down to being able to sprint it out amongst these 4 women now. It looks like they were able to drop off Elle Brewer here from Fearless, so they have whittled it down a little bit more. So it's going to be a heads-up sprint most likely, unless there's another break on this final lap between the riders here. They may be able to break it up again. And but if it does come down to a sprint, Danny's going to be battling it out for 9th or 10th place, as there is a 120 gap up to the leaders here in the women's race. Now, as they head into the reverse KOM, now it is going to be Rachel Elliott toward the front. Watch out for her, one of the most experienced and strongest women we've ever seen in the community out on Zwift. KRT, that's the thing to chat about a little bit here. For those of you who aren't familiar with the KISS Racing team and the Vision team, you know, these community teams have showed up out here today. KRT's got 4 riders here for this UK qualifier. I mean, that's interesting to see. How does that play a role here?
Yeah, I mean, you know, normally if this was a race for first place, that would be a huge advantage for KRT. You know, already it is, because they're going to be used to working together well in a group of this size. But yeah, that's it's very impressive to get 4 women in the front here, and maybe they can try to execute some team tactics and take down the win here today. Maybe even sweep the podium.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. That's a great point, though. I mean, the reality is that in this, I do see some questions actually coming through we do see some questions coming through over at the chats here. What do the winners win? So in all of the other national championships that are going on today, there are not live finals. So as long as you meet all the requirements and you're the first one across the line, you win the national championship for Zwift. For this race specifically, the British Cycling eRacing Championship qualifier, this is all about the top 10 riders who are holding on to a British cycling license. They that meet all the requirements as far as the qualifications for being in the top 10. They will get an invite to the live final for the men and the women to battle it out for the national champion of Zwift in a live final. So that's what is the difference between this specific race and the rest of the national championships today. So that's what the top 10 get out of this situation, to answer the question I did see over there in the chat there. So Sharon Bird here on the attack. She's been an instigator today, that's for sure. Now we do see a couple of power-ups being thrown now. Elliott actually making it with the front now. It's going to be Blaney now with the feather power-up. For those of you who aren't familiar with the power-ups, the feather power-up does reduce the weight of your avatar for 15 seconds, so it's definitely a thing that you want to use on the climbing sections of the course. And that initial part of the climb is the most important part of this climb, is it is the steepest. Now we're back into a 6% gradient, though, as we do see the separations there taking place amongst the riders now, as it is definitely starting to string out here. Dixon from the KRT, looks like KRT are on the attack here at the front end of this race. Vision there trying to follow the wheels, and then it's going to be, it looks like, right on the wheel of the KRT, Lucy Charles. It is a KRT team time trial almost, though. At the front, though, it is going to be Blaney driving the pace. They almost were able to drop off the likes of Bradbury. Wilkinson there from the KRT getting back on terms there, but it's going to be Walker off the back there with Danny Rowan. Murray there still on the chase, about 122 back, as you can see on the far right-hand side of the screen there. You do see the gaps between the riders that are highlighted on the right-hand side here. It was a 4:05. Over the top by Rachel Elliott for the the Queen of the Mountain on the day here. We'll see if they can hold on to that time, or better, if Rachel will be able to have the fastest time of the day for the race out here today. This is going to be their second time over the top of this reverse KOM now, and will it split things up again? Sharon Bird here, 166. Blaney there, 6.6 watts per kilogram. As you can see, the heart rate's fairly high, 174 here coming from Blaney. She's really been, her and Sharon have definitely been the instigators of this, still trying to break things apart, or perhaps just keep the gap that they currently have. As long as they hold on to this, though, all of these women that are meeting the requirements will make that live final here. So it's simply in their benefit to work together, not waste too much energy, because the only risk at this point is that they find themselves off the back and caught by that pack and then out sprinted at the line. You don't want to risk too much here at this point, as you could find yourself throwing away your race if you did too much here, Greg.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I think these women will push the pace a little bit more, extend this gap, and get a little bit comfortable. And then I think once they hit that forward KOM, they're going to be switching gears and start thinking about trying to win the race. They will have secured their position in the live final at this point, and then the rest of that, the rest of it will just be icing on the cake if if you can take the win today, you'll definitely be going into that live final with a little bit extra confidence that you might pick up that British cycling jersey. So one thing I noticed is that Sharon Bird has averaged 4.4 watts per kilogram for this race, and Leah Dixon as well. So the power they've been putting down here for almost an hour, really incredible efforts.
Women seem to be working a little bit more together, or at least pressing the pace a little bit. 5 seconds faster, their second time from the top of the reverse KOM. That is going to be their final time over the top of the reverse KOM. They're going to have one more time over the KOM. What they are currently going down, they will be going up for their final climb, major climb, out on course here. Now, as we are heading into, though, the final kilometers of the men's race, we are into the final 10K here. There's going to be a left-hand turn in just a moment on to the forward KOM for the men's race. There was a little bit of attack by Wales for a moment ago at about 3.8 watts per kilogram right now, but he did give a little bit of a flyer off the front. Didn't go much of anywhere, though, and now it is kind of the calm before the storm. We've been talking about this climb the entirety of the race so far, saying that this would be the moments to win the race, barring an all-out sprint to the finish for a top 10. It's going to be all about this climb for anybody who does not want a group sprint type situation. So this is going to definitely be the moments where you start getting a little bit of jitters in the legs. You start wondering what are you going to have. You start thinking, do I have it to hang on? You start shaking the legs out a little bit. I mean, you can see the watts per kilogram right now on the right-hand side of the course. Definitely a little bit lower than we usually see them. 3.9, 3.5 watts, even some of them down into the ones. Kim Little here making sure he's positioned himself well. At this point, you do not want to be at the back of the pack, though. We are going to see little bursts here and there to make sure out of this climb, you're not chasing. Because if you're chasing going into the forward KOM, your race might already be done.
Yeah. At this point of that climb, and this point of the race with the forward KOM looming, I know, what's going through all these racers' mind is just they want to save as much energy as they can. They're probably watching their heart rates, just doing every little thing they can to rest. They probably will punch it coming out of the tunnel here a little bit, but I don't think we'll see them go quite as hard as usual. In fact, we are looking at it now. They are pretty much holding hands coming out of this. They're starting to be a little bit of attack now on the front, but normally coming out of the tunnel like this, you see red numbers for that whole kicker coming out of that thing, and they're just Ash Beach maybe for the last 100 meters or so. So you can tell all of these riders are nervous. No one wants to be spending the energy now because they want it all for that forward KOM.
Yeah, definitely. We are seeing, it looks like the pace not what we would usually see out of the Ocean Boulevard. Resting up, holding hands, keeping it fairly calm still, as you can see here. So Madison Genesis here, we've been talking a lot about what they could bring to the table here on this climb. They still got 5 riders, I believe, in this lead group. John Mold, Ian Bibby, Joey Walker still involved there. A few others there from the Madison Genesis team. They'll be watching out for them in the red and black kit. But it is Stedman here for Cannon. It looks like toward the front of this group right now, positioning well. It's going to be all about good positioning and then whether or not you got 7 watts per kilogram or so to the top of this climb here. Tom Moses now making his way to the front as well for Madison Genesis. Madison Genesis jerseys now really starting to populate the front end of this group. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 Madison Genesis, but it's tenant here, it looks like, for the Iceberg team now, also making their way to the front there. Then it's going to be Draft. Dempster, we know that Gavin Dempster, winner of last year's KISS finals in London, actually. This rider can sprint. He's been tapering all week. We saw some chatter about that over on the socials here, but will the taper matter at this point up against the likes of Genesis as they make their way to the front here? It's going to be, it looks like Pim now, but no, the defending champion, Kim Little from the All-Stars now making his way to the front. 9.4 watts per kilogram come from him, 152 beats per minute. Looks like he's got plenty of volume in that heart rate to work with yet, as he's got probably about 20 beats plus. 9.5 watts per kilogram. Kim Little does not want this to be a sprint for first place. He wants a top 10 getting away, it looks like, as he continues to put the pressure. He grabs a few meters now, it looks like, to try and get away. Lindsay here, following up for innovation. Ashley there as well, knowing that he wants to get away, does not have a sprint. We've been speaking about the innovation riders that are involved here, that they do not have the sprint that's needed to try and make this happen today in a bunch sprint. But with an attack from Lindsay, no, Mold, John Mold from Madison Genesis now, the multiple-time winner of the KISS Super League, followed up by his teammate Ian Bibby. We might have a duel off the front here from Madison Genesis. Lindsay knows the wheel to follow, as it's 3 off the front now. Innovation now is going with them. Jeffers there. Cameron Jeffers from Wahoo CH is still there as well. Looks like Innovation's got another rider with Ashley following up. Madison Genesis with Joey Walker. Dempster here following very closely. It looks like Laverick, Steve Young, and one more from Madison Genesis just almost getting back on turns. It's going to be Joey Walker there, as well as Tom Moses. Madison Genesis, almost all 5 riders making the lead group, but the pressure is on from Pim as well as Bibby, though. Bibby's gone with Lindsay, it looks like here. Innovation with Madison Genesis off the front, 187 beats per minute right now, 423 watts currently coming from Bibby, but I'm not sure it's going to be able to stick. Will they be able to hold on to this pace, because this is the final time over any kind of climb. It's downhill from here into the Essies and then an all-out sprint to the finish line. Is there enough of a break? Have they been able to break off enough riders to even make any sense out of this? Because if you got more than 10 riders, it's shutdown time and wait for that sprint. Maybe coming through the Essies, they might be able to make something happen. Look at this, though. Off the back, Linford from the BRT team, the Bolt Racing team, trying to get back on terms. And there's one more Madison Genesis rider off the back. Will he be able to close it down with a drafting power up? Just barely able to grab on, it looks like. There's also a Dree team rider, Pat Christopher, there trying to get back on terms. On the front, though, Ashley doing everything it can to push the pace, trying to say not a sprint finish, but it's not going to happen. The dream of a top 10 walking away without a sprint finish has been shut down. But there is the reality of maybe a counter to everything that just went down. It's a 10-second gap, and we got turned around there for a moment there, but it looks like it's about a 10-second gap here to Arbor as well as Crump. No, 20-second gap. It's going out very quickly. 21 riders with Christopher Durham making this. U23 rider, a youngster that is involved here still. This is going to be interesting to see. You know, do we got any stats on Christopher here? Because I know this kid's been racing, and he's a great crit racer at the age level he races at. I've seen him take some W's or at least podiums in real life, some cool videos of him racing. Does Durham have a chance here, Greg, in your opinion?
Let's see. Let me take a look here. Let me take a look and see if we can pull up his stats. You know, what's really amazing with that, with those efforts on the front, even with all that effort, still to have 20+ riders in here, you know, just shows you how strong that draft was. They were going so fast. The riders were actually able to draft, you know, going up that climb, and I think that really played into how they managed to keep this group together. So, you know, definitely going to be looking at a big bunch sprint here at this point.
Yeah, 23, 24 riders now at this point. As you can see, there has been a gap, obviously, that's opened up at this point. We do see aero power-ups and drafting power-ups and all kinds of power-ups being blown at this point. We've only got about, it looks like 3, I think it's going to be a little more than 3K to go to the line at this point. We're going to have a couple extra K, I think, in there than we thought originally, as I believe to the line. It's usually about 3K from around the Italian village or so, but we'll have to wait and see if we got it just right on the total. But if it is correct, it is 3K from right here to the finish line. I think we'll be finishing just a little bit over 1:15 out here today. So involved here as far as the favorites go. Let's start hearing some of those predictions over at the chat. Let us know who you think is going to take down the W. I wouldn't be counting out the likes of John Mold out here. He's been taking down sprint after sprint in the KISS Super League amongst the pros. You know, but those who want to show up and shine and really, you know, there's always that reality of the dark horse, the reality of the wild card that's in there that's looking to, especially with the world of Zwift, with the reality of bringing all of these riders together from all over the world, that they have their chance amongst the pros. They have their chance in this British cycling, you know, qualifier to show what they got to the world. That's why I was highlighting Christopher Durham. I've seen him come out over and over again to try and get involved in these races and try and show what he's got to the world of cycling. I've seen him training week in and week out for the last 4 years out on Zwift. I wouldn't be surprised if he's been tapering even specifically for this race for a chance at this for that Race 3R team out there today. So they are definitely represented, looks like, and maybe the only Race 3R team member actually out there that has still made this front group. Again, Kim Little, though, he's not going to want to be outside the top 10. He's going to defend that jersey at the live final. Gavin Dempster, we've seen him already at a live final in London over in the UK. So we'll see if he can punch another ticket and maybe take another win at a live final here. As we head through the sprint section, we'll have the final time that riders will be able to collect a power-up. So anybody at this point that does not have the power-up that they want will be using any power-up that they do not want to grab that arrow power-up if they can through this next section. Again, it is only the top 10 that can make the live final. This is an all-out battle for 10th place or better on the day. And the reality is you don't know who has a qualifying license. You don't know who's showing up today that will be able to take the spots. So you've got to hit top 10. That is going to be what it's all about. I think everyone's going to be racing for first at this point because being number one, that's all that's going to matter, I think. Right, Greg? I mean, what's the tactic in a sprint where you got to get 10th or better?
Yeah, I think you can't. I mean, I think, there is one thing you might do is you might try to surf wheels a little more than you normally would. If you don't need to come around at the end for first, you might play it a little safer and sit in a little longer and try to surf some wheels if you're just trying to get top 10. But I do think some of these riders, the Madison Genesis boys and Kim Little, the guys from Canyon, they're going to be going for the win here. And, almost any of them have a chance to win. John Mould, Kim Little, Steve Young, Gavin Dempster all have the ability to do 15 watts per kilogram for 15 seconds. And I think it's going to take that to win this race. Even after an hour, I suspect we'll see 15, 16, 17 watts per kilogram coming in this final sprint.
These boys have been flying, and the speeds have been so incredibly high that they are running into some of the riders going the other direction at this point. As you do see the population on the right-hand side of the screen, the riders nearby is starting to kick in with a few of the other racers that are just finishing up their first lap out on course here. But we do see it looks like Mould here really driving the pace here from Madison Genesis. They head into the final kilometer here. Ashley here now trying to set himself up for a solid sprint. You do not want to find yourself at the back of this pack. If you do not have an arrow power up, you want to find yourself right within that top three. You want to be very well positioned to grab onto a wheel. It's all about the draft and the right time to kick it here. Pat Christopher now saying a little bit of a sorry in there. Not sure what that's all about there, but somebody saying interesting little bit of maybe there's some rubbing elbows in the virtual world there and saying sorry for what went down there. I'm not exactly sure, but we're into the final K now, and it's going to be Cameron Jeffers at 186 beats per minute. Is he going to have anything left in the legs with 186 right now? Take a look at the heart rates as we look around. Are they too high for some of these riders now? Now we see Canyon Eisberg, DHB there making his way to the front now, it looks like. And Dempster looks to be set up well. Mugridge is there as well. Madison Genesis now taking over the front end of the pack now and trying to drive that pace. Ash Beach now, Wahoo Cycling Hub, it looks like. Madison Genesis now calming it down. 190 beats per minute for Joey Walker, though. Dempster here set up for draft now, as you can see. Now it's going to be Innovation leading it out way too early, in my opinion, though, as we see 8.3 watts per kilogram for him. You do not want to kick until you hit that flatter section of the course. Here comes Ashley. No, Madison Genesis taking over. It looks like it's going to be Pim here for Madison Genesis. Now the arrow power-ups are starting to be below. It's going to be the Dream Team taking over in the green kit. Now here comes a drafting power-up from the Madison Genesis rider. That is not going to be what he wants at this point. It's all about the top 10. It's going to be Phillips here taking over the front end of the pack, but no, it's going to be Madison Genesis with Ian Bibby with 15 watts per kilogram from Ian Bibby. Ian Bibby taking over the front end of this pack, but no, who's coming through? Steve Young for Canyon takes down the W. Canyon showing us how it's done there. Canyon ZCC, Steve Young has not been able to make it happen in any of the races up to this point. We've seen in the last few weeks, KISS Super League, we were talking about him for the All-Stars, but he knows how to set up for that that final 100 meters, he knows like the back of his hand, and he just showed us why. The Python strikes for Canyon ZCC, and they get their first W in quite a while, actually. And, well, I shouldn't say that. Lionel Vuesen has been absolutely killing it out there, but Bibby looked to be taking
Alex
it
West.
there. You know, and Alex West as well. Good call there, Alex West as well. Let's take a quick look at the replay, though, as that was quite an amazing sprint there all around in the men's race there. Here as it opened up, as you can see, it is going to be the initial kick from the Dream Team for Christopher. We might be able to see what the top 10 was like at the final there in just a moment as they do come across the line, but we will wait for the preliminary results, excuse me, not official results, as it comes across the line. Look at the kick there from Steve Young. 14 watts per kilogram at the last moment. Kim Little for the All-Stars is still in there for the top 10. Everybody behind there is just praying at this point that they're in the top 10 because it's so bunched up. But it was just at the line there. Young. We saw Lab as well as Phillips there. Lindsley all through at the last second there. So interesting to see. We'll have to wait and see how that ended up playing out amongst them for the preliminary. We'll wait for that, Greg. I'll get those results for you in just a moment, Greg. But the women are heading into their section of the course here for their deciding. Now, again, they've already made the selection. It's going to be about the chase coming from the row group that is a solid 336 back, and it looks like Reed is on the attack from the KRT team actually a little bit on the front here. So this is what the race is still about for the top 10. This situation here with the chase, when it comes to who's going to make the live final, it's really about this chase group. Now, for the W, for the bragging rights, though, it's going to be all about this group that is heading into their final time over this climb now. So let's see how things are going to play out for the women on this climb as they make their way for their final time over the KOM. Absolutely awesome to see the likes of Rachel Elliott from the KRT team in there after suffering a major stroke. Absolutely amazing to see her hammering away 6 watts per kilogram out there, 5.2 watts per kilogram coming from her. Now, Sharon Bird now, as you were saying, probably the most aggressive rider we've seen so far. She was pushing 4.5 plus for the duration of the race. Lucy Charles, obviously still in the professional Ironman triathlete out there. Iron Woman, 5.3 watts per kilogram, killing it now toward the front. Now we are seeing some power-ups now being thrown down. Is that an aero power-up there coming from perhaps Elliott? No, Elliott using the feather power up now. Dixon now on her left-hand side. They're using the aero power up. It must be a little bit of a turning of the screws here from Blaney now as she's hammering away at 6.4 watts per kilogram. Charles this time not fade climbing. Charles now wanting to take the W. We saw the likes of her at about 4.5 watts per kilogram the last time she climbed over this. We saw her down in the 156 or so. Obviously was not bothered at all the last time over this climb about whether or not she could close those gaps down. Now, seeing Blaney go off the front now, we see the real power of Lucy Charles now as she kicks down to 5.66 watts per kilogram coming from her, getting right on that wheel. It is going to be Sharon Bird. Dixon there following up very closely there, 197 beats per minute coming from the KRT rider. Mary Wilkson now, it's getting scary for Mary now as we do see 5.9 and off the back. Can she hold on as she's trying to hold on to the wheel of Gardner from the KRT team? Will they work together? We're seeing the aero power up here coming from, it looks like Gardner, seeing that the gaps are going out and knowing that Lucy Charles is getting off the front with Blaney. This is going to be a threat. Still a 2-second gap, though, between Blaney, and it looks like Sharon and Charles now working together with Dixon right on the wheel there. The gaps, as you can see, just starting to open up. It's going to be a race in meters to grab onto the wheel that's just in front of you, and you do see just behind there the reality of when it strings out like that. It goes out by 5 meters or so. A 155, a 157, almost 10 seconds faster than the last time over the top here. As we've seen Charles now, Bird, Dixon not able to grab back on. We've got a group of 3 off the front that might not be seen again. Dixon with an aero power up. Gardner jumping on. Wilkinson there. Rachel Elliott off the back down, it looks like. Will she be able to hold on to the line? Most likely. 7th place currently, and will be able to punch that ticket if she's holding on to a British cycling British cycling license out there. Rich Elliott might be able to punch a ticket to a live final. It'd be pretty cool to see if she is able to do so. But Dixon here now with the KRT team really starting to put the pressure on for this W. And I mean, look at this. Between them, it's going to be Blaney and Charles versus KRT at this point.
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be tough to call this sprint at this point. With with Sharon Bird in here, I think she's probably got the strongest sprint from this group now when she's fresh. But the thing is, she's put in she's put in the most work here, maybe along with Dixon. So the question is that sprint fresh for her?
Yeah, that's a great question there. Actually, I mean, we've seen the push there from Blaney, and open over the top there of that climb. It looked like a lot of the chips were thrown down. Kind of an all-in climb there to try and get away. It seemed like she's got 6.6 watts per kilogram. It looks like 6.7 now. And Gardner, they're following up with some orange numbers. Do you see that 10 watts per kilogram for a moment on the right-hand side of the screen? 190 beats per minute currently coming from Dixon now, and it looks like maybe a little bit of a spot of bother for Sharon Bird to hang on, though. Been super aggressive up to this point. 174 beats per minute coming through for this rider. And it looks like Sharon, though, able to close it down on that Tron bike here for Vision Cycling now. As Charles now follows it up with 5.6, it looks like, and 168 beats per minute. We are seeing why she's got that pro badge next to her name in the world of triathlon. A quick recovery as she went up into those 170s. Drops the beats down just a little bit. Still 4.7 on the front, and, it's not needed. Maybe just the workout at this point, as she's 115 into the race. She's just getting warmed up perhaps out there as Bird hangs onto the wheel, Dixon as well, and Mary Wilkinson, it looks like, from the KRT. Bradbury there, 56 seconds back. Rachel Elliott looks to be joining Bradbury, and this will be a group of two with it looks like 56 seconds up to the main pack. This is the main pack out on course, lead pack with about 4 kilometers to go to the finish line. I do not believe that Elliott is going to be in any threat at this point of having anything closed down. Her and Bradbury have plenty of space between them and the chase group of
Absolutely.
Murray here, as well as Rose Pryor. Now, what's interesting is Danny Rowe sitting in 11th place now at this point. They could close things down to Murray and Pryor. And, that's another spot in order to, with Murray off the front there, this is interesting. Is this an attack that took place from Murray? Because she was in this group. It looks like Murray is trying to solidify her spot in the top 10 without a sprint.
Yeah.
Up against Pryor and Rowe at this point. This is a brave move, but this is how it's got to get done up against the likes of World Championship quality of Danny Rowe in a sprint.
I think actually this is a brilliant move because she's in 9th right now, and the women behind are still going to be able to sprint for the 10th place finish, which means none of them are going to want to take up the initiative to chase down Murray at this point. So I think Murray has played an absolutely brilliant strategic move of going off the front here. I don't think we'll see any of the 4 women behind really take up the initiative because they're all going to be waiting for that sprint.
Yeah, interesting to see. This is quite the move here. Very brilliant. Nobody really seems interested in closing it down. Now it's just about everything she's got for suffering for about 10 minutes or so. I'd say about 10 minutes to the line. So it's full-on 10-minute TT for Murray here at this point. It doesn't look like they're super interested to make the chase. Rowe looks confident at this point to try and take this down. We'll see if she can do so, as we are seeing 3.5 watts per kilogram coming from Danny now. Moving forward, though, let's go ahead and see if we can jump in with the leaders of the race as they are making their way into the final. It's completely strung out, actually. Interesting to see, as just for the pride of it here, Blaney here continues on any time that we find any uphill, pushes the pace in that 6 watts per kilogram, trying to break things apart. Millie Wilkinson here struggling to get back on terms with the riders there, even using a drafting power-up to try and grab back on. Mary here, 178 beats per minute currently right now. Lucy Charles making her way to the front there, as we are seeing in the white and blue and red kit. Now, Lucy with a little bit of kick up into 7 watts per kilogram. Not super interested, it looks like, in actually attacking, but just making sure she doesn't find herself off the back and well positioned here at this point. So Blaney finds herself in the back, though, after those attacks. Wilkinson, 3.5 watts per kilogram. Gardner now, it looks like 3.6. These watts per kilogram are not resting watts per kilogram. This is kind of tension in the air. 4.4, 4.0, this isn't the situation we saw in the men's race at all. This is kind of like a lot of jitters in the leg and just keeping the pace extremely high. It's not even a setup for a sprint-like situation. It seems like it's just drag race. Like, how high can we push the pace and see if anybody falls off at this point, Greg?
Yeah, honestly, I have no idea what's going on. Probably what Mary Wilkinson was doing with that drafting power up there was just trying to use it before they went under this final banner. This is the last chance, like you said, in the men's race to pick up another power up. She's probably gambling on getting that arrow power up, which is absolutely the king power up, or let's say the queen power up, to have in that final sprint. That's what you want. And so, she didn't want that drafting power up. She wanted to use it, maybe pick up the arrow power up coming in that final banner.
We are seeing a power up that was picked up, it looked like, by Lucy there through that final banner, and looks to try and get away and not have a sprint situation. That would be a very smart move by Lucy, I think, up against some of these sprinters here. And it looks like Blaney here with that drafting power up, just seeing if anybody were to come across maybe, and then she could get a wheel there as she goes through. Gardner off the back. It is going to be about 5 meters to Gardner there with a 1 second gap. Gardner has to get back on terms. Looks like she's able to do so at 5.6 watts per kilogram. Wilkinson, though, has found herself out the back. If they do not close it down now, will be set. It looks like Dixon is going to be shed from this group, so it's going to be a 5-up sprint with Sharon Bird playing the smart card, it looks like, here on the back, but maybe not, as the group has split at this point, as Wilkinson let a gap go, and maybe it was a little tactical for the KRT team there, knowing that Bird has a good sprint and wanted her not involved there. Now another attack from Blaney up in the 9 watts per kilogram real quick. Blaney here continues to push the pace, 185 beats per minute, 103 RPMs. Gardner follows quickly to the wheel. Lucy Charles now 5.0 watts per kilogram coming from her, and it looks like 173 beats per minute as the heart rates start to rise as they get into the final moments of this race within the British Cycling Qualifier for the finals for the championships here. As we head into it, it's going to be a 5-up sprint. The top 10 that do hold on to a British cycling license and qualify for all the requirements will be invited to a live final from this race, but this is for the pride of it at this point, for who's going to take down the W. Blaney again does not want a sprint situation to the line, seems to just want to break this apart and get away. Again, pushing the heart rate 186. Looks like we're going to see Charles closing it down again into 6 watts per kilogram coming from her. Gardner follows it up closely. Bird there, all right, on the wheel there. Wilkinson able to follow all along. Wilkinson continues to sit in. Blaney, though, with a dropout, looks to be uninvolved. Has to cross the line, though. Hopefully makes her way to the line before the finish. But Charles here jumps onto the wheel of Gardner as Gardner leads things out. 6.3 watts per kilogram. Charles quickly closes that down. Is she going to continue on, though? That's the question. Is she just going to say caution to the wind? No, she backs off, knowing it's going to come down to the last 200 meters, as it always does in the racing out on Zwift. It's Lucy Charles leading things out at 6.4 watts per kilogram. It's coming right down to the line here between these four. It's just a group of 4 at this point. Here's the arrow power up, though, coming from Sharon Bird from Vision Cycling, now leading things out. But no, Lucy Charles seems to have the watts per kilogram to give as she gets up and out of the saddle. But no, Bird's now 6.1 watts per kilogram. Mary Wilkinson for the KRT. Looks like she's going to make it happen for KRT, but no, it looks like their teammate Gardner's coming across the line, and it looks like it was Gardner followed up, I believe, by Wilkinson there. We can take a look at the replay here in just a second there. What a sprint all around. It looks like perhaps Lucy Charles unable to kick into the orange numbers that are needed, though, at the end of the race for the sprint there. It was amazing effort there, but unable to, make it happen in a sprint situation, showing exactly why it's a professional, she's a professional triathlete out there. But let's go ahead and take a look real quick here at the final few moments there for the women. And it was, as you can see here, Bird did kick it first into the 7 watts per kilogram or so, 174 beats per minute with that arrow power up, but was unable to hold on, I believe, as her teammate Wilkinson did have the kick to the line. We do see the final kick, 8.7 watts per kilogram coming from Wilkinson. Charles had 8 watts per kilogram, but Gardner with 11.3 in the final 100 meters comes flying right on by with that speed kick. And it's going to be Charles who sat on, it looks like, just barely maybe nipping Bird. Nope, Bird had a little bit of a kick, it looked like, there right before the line, and that arrow power up. Actually, Bird the only one that had the arrow power up there, but it was Gardner who was able to take it down with that solid sprint. Greg, amazing racing all around. Amazing racing all around between the men and the women. Do we got some results for the men's race, though, out there as we close things out a little bit here for the eRacing qualifier?
Absolutely, yeah. Madison Genesis putting 4 into the top 10 there, securing Ian Bibby, George Pym, John Mould, and Joey Walker into the live finals. Of course, it'll depend on who has the the right qualifications. But the top 10 overall: Steve Young, Adam Labette. This is not a rider I'm too familiar with. Looks like he's relatively new to Zwift, taking second place. That's an excellent result. Steve Young's teammate James Phillips taking third, followed by defending UK National Championship Kim Little. We saw Sam Lindsay come in fifth from the innovation team, then Ian Bibby from Madison Genesis in sixth. Gavin Dempster from Draft, someone we talked about a little bit during the race, securing his spot in the live final at seventh. And then three Madison Genesis riders, George Pym, John Mould, and Joey Walker, rounding out the top 10.
Just outside, and perhaps depending on how things end up, a lot of those riders, though, I see in that top 10, all with, some pretty, marking maybe Adam Labette. We're not familiar with that name. We'll see if there's a variant, but I'm familiar with almost all of those riders, and we'll see how they end up qualifying, if they do have the British cycling license. If they do and they meet all the requirements, they will be invited to the live final. Ed Laverick there from Cycling Hub, just outside in 11th. Tom Moses, Madison Genesis in 12th there. Alan MacLeod, Pat Christopher, Neil Linford there. That's the rounding out the top 15 for the men's race. Now, for the live final, there will be three different races, actually. There's going to be a points race, there's going to be an elimination race, and there's going to be a scratch race. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. It's going to be super exciting racing, actually, out there for the live final, as it isn't just going to be a straight-up first one across the line. There's going to be some build-up for that championship between the racers, with three different races, actually, at that live final. So looking at the women's race here, we have looking to see if I can get back in here for the sprint for the top 10 still, as we did lose it there for just a second. It looks like we do have the final sprint to the line here, and sorry for just a second there. We did want to get into there as we were getting into the final few moments here for the women's race, but it is going to be the breakaway from who was off the. There was one rider off the front. Did she hold on to it there? I do not believe.
Yeah, let's see if we can find that.
This is interesting. Blaney's been sitting at 0.0 watts per kilogram before the line this entire time. Interesting to see.
What's going on?
Is maybe a rider who just logged in to see if she could contend and then decided not to
didn't want to win
the race there. Yeah, or something along those lines. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Maybe a little bit of tactical thing going on there, but it is going to be Reed here. And Rowe, this is it. Whoever takes this sprint takes the final spot for the top 10. Danny Rowe, I'd be surprised if it isn't going to be her to the line here, but will Danny Rowe be able to make this happen? No kick just yet. It's usually the first one to go who's got the orange numbers. Brewer goes first, though. Rowe, 6.8. Now, where is the big numbers there from Rowe there? We got to see 11 watts per kilogram coming from Danny Rowe, but no Brewer there from Fearless. Is she going to be able to hold on? 11 watts per kilogram. Danny Rowe looks to be making this happen across the line. Amazing sprint. Will be taken a top 10 position there for Rowan King. Not surprised one bit, but kind of left it right to the line there for the top 10 situation there, though. I mean, that was a little risky, but as long as it's top 10, but it came right down to it.
Yeah, this top 10 thing really makes things interesting because, it just it adds a little extra dynamic to the race. Obviously we can't have this every race, but it's it's nice to have this kind of thing once in a while where we're watching for multiple sprints, in groups of 10 off the front and things like that. So, kind of a cool little inadvertent format that British Cycling has put on here for us by inviting 10 to the live final.
Yeah, I really it does change things up a lot. Also another interesting obviously thing about it is the way that the live final is going to be as well. Just that I think the changes in the formats really, not just the first one across the line. A lot of times we're just waiting for that final sprint and stuff. So, in this situation, we saw a lot more tactics being employed to try and get away. It kind of made people want to break the group apart a lot earlier. We saw, a lot of riders really try and put an effort in to see if they could get away and not just waiting for that final sprint. We obviously saw that in the women's race where things completely broke apart and ended up with this final sprint for that top 10 situation. But the sprint at the end there for the win was obviously for Pride, but those women all, if they got the qualifications right, punching their ticket to a top 10 live final situation for the British Cycling National Championships. So, do we got the women's results here? Let's. I'm seeing the top 6.
Looks like they're not quite up yet.
See if we can
pull them up here.
We're waiting on
some of the women were not showing up in the live results. I don't think Lucy Charles was showing up in there, so we might have some trouble pulling in the unofficial results. But we can try to get a few of them at least. See what we got
so
here.
in the rules, there does need to be a registration with ZwiftPower.com. There needed to be, so we'll see if that does happen after the fact. Some of the riders maybe not knowing that there is, when you do sign up for the races, got to know exactly what you're signing up for and how to get involved in it. But we are seeing, it looks like, for the unofficial results, Gardner, Wilkinson, followed by Sharon Bird, Leah Dixon, Rachel Elliott for 5th, Rosamund Bradbury, Caroline Murray, Claire Reed, Leah Brewer, and then Alana Rose Pryor. I think Danny as well as Lucy Charles and Danny Rowe, it looks like maybe not signed up on ZP, so we'll have to maybe get them signed up on ZP, unless they were just showing up for the fun of it on the day too, and are not interested in the live final.
Yeah, maybe they have some training plan that wouldn't allow them to come to the live final, but wanted to jump in the race, show their stuff, and get a good workout. Obviously Lucy Charles seemed to be getting a good threshold workout for most of that race. At least until the second lap.
Definitely. Well, I think that's going to be it for us on the day today for the eRacing qualifier for British cycling. And the top 10 again for the men's and women. They're going to be getting a live invite. Wait for an announcement from Zwift from that. Don't miss later on today, though. We will be live with the U.S. national champion, and we'll be crowning, we'll be watching for the first across the line. And that one will be all about first across the line on the day today.
Absolutely.
Great job to all the racers out there. Watch out for me and Greg live in just a couple hours for the U.S. National Championships. Great job to all the riders. And as always, everybody, ride on.